Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Assyrian Genocide Centennial Commemoration. My name is Ninos Hanna, and I have the distinct honor of being your Master of Ceremonies for today's special and sacred commemoration. 100 years ago, the Ottoman Empire committed genocide against the Assyrians, Armenians, and Greeks. According to some scholars, the genocide claimed 2/3 of the Assyrian ethnicity. Unfortunately, the persecution of Assyrians did not end with the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. From August 8 to 11, 1933, in the newly established state of Iraq, 3,000 Assyrian villagers were massacred in the northern town of Simele. The massacre was covered by Western media sources, and it inspired the intellectual development of Raphael Lemkin, a lawyer who would go on to coin the word genocide. Today, my friends, October 24, 2015, I regret to inform you that genocide and the persecution of Assyrians continues in parts of the Middle East. Now, I know it's Saturday afternoon, and this is some pretty heavy stuff for us to be listening to on our day off from work. I promise we'll try to lighten the mood as much as possible, but the severity and the urgency around this matter cannot be ignored. A few nights ago, I was relaxing on my recliner at home and reflecting on my responsibilities as the MC for today's commemoration. And my two boys, Enkido and Robbie, were sitting down there watching a very popular Disney movie called The Lion King. And at that moment that I started to listen in, a character named Rafiki was telling Simba the lion, "Oh yes, the past can hurt, but you can either run from it or you can learn from it." Wow, how fitting with what we're trying to accomplish here today. Nobody takes pleasure in sitting and discussing the topic of genocide. But if we continue to run from the topic, we will never learn from it. And if we never learn from it, we'll never be able to teach others. And if we fail to teach others, we will never be able to stop it. As you can imagine, it takes a lot of hard work and dedication to create such a monument and host an event. Members of the Assyrian American Association of Massachusetts have worked tirelessly to make this happen. We now have the first genocide memorial in the United States. At this time, I would like to call on the President, the man who has helped lead us to this very moment here today, the President of AAM, Sargon Hanna.
Good afternoon. Welcome. On behalf of the Assyrian American Association of Massachusetts, we'd like to welcome all of you here. And I would like to take this second to personally acknowledge a few key members of our community here. We have Congressman James McGovern of the United States Massachusetts 2nd District, State Senator Michael Moore, State Representative David Moradian, our priest from New York, St. Peter Syriac Orthodox Church, Father Gabriel Eda, Father Greg Christakos from Unholy Mercenaries Greek Orthodox Church. Our speakers today, Mr. Sabri Atman, Director and Founder of the Seifo Center, Dr. Mary Jane Rain, Executive Director at Strasser Center for Holocaust and Genocide Studies, Clark University, Mark Mamagonian, Director of Academic Affairs at Nasser, Dr. Taner Akshem from Clark University as well, Medfono Bashir Sadi from Assyrian Democratic Organization in Syria. Thank you. Father Gabriel, if you could come with the invocation.
I would ask if everybody may rise, please. شما بواب الروح القديس حضر شعر أمين. Almighty Lord, we've gathered here today to commemorate the souls of those who you have accepted them and honored them in the heavenly kingdom as martyrs, who have given their lives for the glorification of your name. Those who brought the good news of your gospel to the whole world. I ask you, Lord, to stretch your invisible right and my right and bless all this gathering that have come together today to commemorate this blessed occasion. And I ask you, Lord, to remind us through your Holy Spirit that those who have perished are today alive in each and every one that is here gathered today to glorify your name. I ask you to bless them all, Lord. May your holy cross be their protector day and night. In the name of Christ we ask. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you to both of you, Mike Scully and to Tabitha Abbey for that. That was absolutely beautiful. At this time, I am going to call on Mr. Sabri Atman, who is the director and founder of the Safo Center. Sabri has worked for many years on the cause of the Assyrian people, and he is now going to give us a brief history of the genocide, and then that will be followed up with a video that was produced by the Safo Center, which Sabri works for. Mr. Sabri Atman, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Shalom Aleichem. Today is a very important and unique day in the history of the Assyrians. This is the first genocide memorial erected in the honor of the victims and the survivors of the Assyrian settlers in Massachusetts. First and foremost, on behalf of the Assyrian Genocide Research Center, SAFO Center, I express my deepest gratitude and wish to congratulate the Assyrian American Association of Massachusetts on your success with the erection of this historical memorial. In recent years, Assyrians have been working diligently towards a greater public awareness and worldwide recognition of the Assyrian genocide. The genocide committed against Assyrian people by the Ottoman Empire and other genocides, including 1933 Simele massacre, northern Iraq, are historical realities that have affected the lives of every Assyrian family. We Assyrians standing here today are the children of a nation which has almost been completely eliminated. They have not been and shall never be forgotten because today history is being rewritten here in Grafton. I am also proud to stand in front of you today knowing that over 26 countries have officially recognized the Armenian genocide. There are 5 countries recognize the Assyrian genocide. It is my hope that in the future, countries will continue to follow in this pattern and will also include the recognition of Assyrians and Greeks victims of the same genocide. In closing, I would like to say that we must continue to demand that Turkey and all nations around the world recognize this historical reality. We will never forget the Assyrian, Armenian, and Greek genocide. Thank you. بنا الفوتشامو حمشحصر مع مرة دولة تركيا لقطو دعامو ثرويو أرمنويو يونويو بنا الفوتشامو 33 مع مرة دولة دعراق لقطو دعامو ثرويو أديوما أمدتكو بسوريا وبعراق سيفو حاثويو وسيفو فالكو مو مكتب زبنيدانيو وسيفو فالكو محايدانيو وسيفو لقطوعينالي لقمطعينالي تبديساك.
Deacon Gabriel Hanna will now lead all of us in chanting of the Lord's Prayer in our native language.
Can I ask the priest to rise?
Oh
next speaker, Mary Jane Ryan, is the Executive Director at the Strassler Center for Holocaust and Genocide Studies at Clark University. She has been a valuable partner and advocate in serving our cause, and words cannot describe the appreciation we have for her. So please join in welcoming Ms. Ryan.
I'm honored to be here today as a representative of Clark University and on behalf of the Strassler Center for Holocaust and Genocide Studies. Today's commemoration of the 100th anniversary of the Assyrian genocide and the dedication of a public memorial to the victims represent triumphs of remembrance. In her poem, Before the Silence, Sophia Kantogeorg Kostas poignantly asks, "Can an unknown tragedy be forgotten?" This monument, located far from the scene of Assyrian massacres, tells a story that demands our attention. It calls upon visitors to remember the suffering of the Assyrian victims of genocide, and it reminds us that remembrance should not be limited to Assyrian activists and community leaders like my dear friends Sabri Atman and Elias Hanna. Situating this important new memorial here in the picturesque New England town of Grafton, Massachusetts, speaks to the obligation of teaching about Ottoman genocide to all Americans. An obligation that my colleague, Professor Taner Akçam, a foremost scholar of Ottoman genocides, recognizes as well. Assyrian stories deserve to be told alongside those of Armenians and Pontian Greeks. They deserve to be researched and examined by scholars and genocide activists among the genocidal cases of the 20th century. This monument commemorates the tragic fate of the Assyrian victims of Ottoman genocide, but it also highlights Assyrian Christians who remain at risk today. It is a cliche to speak about education and genocide awareness as tools against never again, when in fact, the reality of the 21st century is ever again, as Middle Eastern Christian minorities remain highly vulnerable to persecution and massacres. The renowned Holocaust historian Yehuda Bauer reminds us that the suffering of victims is always the same. There are no Olympics of suffering. No murder is better than any other. The Assyrian massacres were genocide, and they can and must be compared with other genocidal events. Thanks to the advocacy of Elias Hanna, Eden Nabi Fry, Sabri Atman, and others, the Strassler Center stands ready and eager to teach and research the Assyrian genocide. When survivors are no longer around to serve as witnesses to tragic events, education, teaching, and research continue as memorials alongside monuments like the one we inaugurate today. Congratulations to Elias and the Assyrian community on this magnificent dedication, and thank you.
Our next speaker is the Director of the Academic Fairs at NASR, which is the National Association of Armenian Studies and Research. It is an honor for us to have this individual here today, and we have to say and acknowledge that the Armenians have done a tremendous job in raising awareness, not only within their community, but around the country. And it's great to have you here helping the Assyrians try to do the same thing. May I introduce Mark Mamagonian.
Thank you. It is a great honor to be here today, and on behalf of myself and my family and the National Association for Armenian Studies and Research, thank you for inviting me. And I should mention that one of the founders of the National Association for Armenian Studies and Research was not an Assyrian, but he was Professor Richard Fry, the great scholar and the late husband of Dr. Eden Nabi Fry. And perhaps as a result of that, but perhaps for other reasons, the Assyrians have always been known to us, and increasingly so as the years go by. I have to say that years ago when I was growing up, I didn't know anything at all about the Assyrians, I have to admit, except that perhaps they had a great empire in antiquity. I first read William Saroyan's My Name is Aram when I was a kid, where I met in the first story of that book the kind and gentle farmer John Byro, who was described as an Assyrian who, out of loneliness, had learned to speak Armenian. Later still, when I was in high school, I read Saroyan's great story, 70,000 Assyrians. Has everybody here read that story? Because I'm going to come back to that. Anyway, 70,000 Assyrians, written in the 1930s, wherein he encounters a barber in San Francisco named Theodore Badal, who turns out to be an Assyrian and not, as he had supposed, an Armenian. Says Saroyan in the story, well, it was something. They, the Assyrians, came from our part of the world. They had noses like our noses, eyes like our eyes, hearts like our hearts. They had a different language. When they spoke, we couldn't understand them, but they were a lot like us. The heartbroken Badal tells Saroyan, we're washed up as a race. We're through. It's all over. We went in for the wrong things. We went in for simple things, peace and quiet and families. We didn't go in for machinery and conquest and militarism. We had our day, I suppose. Then he informs Saroyan that there are only 70,000 Assyrians left. This story was written in the immediate aftermath of the 1933 massacre, so this was all very fresh at the time. But what I still didn't know, what Saroyan didn't explain, is that not only were the Assyrians like us, Armenians, noses and eyes and otherwise, and not only did we come from the same part of the world, but also the Assyrians and the Armenians lived alongside each other, sometimes married each other, and shared the same fate in 1915, not forgetting also the Greeks, in what is increasingly and rightly seen as the genocide and ethnic cleansing of the Christian peoples of the Ottoman Empire. Understandably, perhaps, but for too long, the Armenians tended to let the genocide of the Assyrians linger in the background. Perhaps preoccupied with the challenges of documenting the annihilation of the Armenians and countering its denial by Turkey, maybe it was not seen that ignoring or downplaying the interrelated fates of the Assyrians and the Greeks was at minimum to show a lack of empathy. It was also terribly counterproductive, inasmuch as the existence of the Assyrian genocide does not diminish the Armenian genocide or vice versa, but on the contrary, the histories reinforce each other. Fortunately, in the past decade or more, this has begun to change, and it has helped a great deal, of course, that high-quality scholarly work on the genocide of the Assyrians has increased, so much so that the government of Turkey feels compelled to deny that genocide as well, a perverse but unmistakable sign that strides are being made. I know all of this now, but I didn't know it before. I didn't know that my great-grandparents from Karpet had Assyrian neighbors. I didn't know that my grandmother, a child of Karpetsi parents born in America, had a first husband who died terribly young, named Arakelian, who was a half Armenian, half Assyrian from Karpet. I didn't know these things before, but I know them now. Saroyan concludes 70,000 Assyrians with these words, quote, "This work is in tribute to Iowa, to Japan, to Assyria, to Armenia, to the race of man everywhere, to the dignity of that race, the brotherhood of things alive." I'm not expecting Paramount Pictures to film this work. I'm thinking of 70,000 Assyrians, one at a time, a great race. I'm thinking of Theodore Badal, himself 70,000 Assyrians, and 70 million Assyrians, himself Assyria, and man, standing in a barbershop in San Francisco in 1933, and being, still, himself, the whole race. So let me conclude where I should have begun and say again what an honor it is for me to be here today, to take part in this important event of remembrance, of commemoration of those who were lost to the genocide and those who have worked so hard to keep their memory alive for a century. It means a great deal to me to stand before you today and to stand with you today. Thank you for including the Armenians, for including this Armenian, and let us always stand together. Thank you.
وفرح
When people ask, how many members does your organization have? I have no shame in taking the number of paying members and multiplying by 2. Because the amount of work that this man puts in to his organization is worth double of everything we do. I mean, I also want to say about my dad that he is not only dedicated to his organization here in Grafton, he's dedicated to his community. He serves outside the Assyrian community. He has served to help Assyrians around the country and also around the globe. What an honor it is to call up a man that I love, a man that you all love, and a man, without his help, we could not have had what we have here today. Mr. Elias Hanlon.
It is an honor and privilege to have our distinguished Congressman Jim McGovern with us for this special 100-year anniversary genocide commemoration. Congressman McGovern has been a leader in advocating human rights and a formidable spokesman against hunger. He is very passionate for the causes he supports and caring for the less fortunate. He is not intimidated by special interest groups who attempt to stand in his way of doing good for his community and is humble in all his endeavor. He gave his full support to our Assyrian Congresswoman from California, Anna Isho, in her bipartisan resolution that called the persecution of Christians in the Middle East a genocide. Without further ado, please give a warm welcome to our Congressman, my friend Jim McGovern.
Well, first of all, let me thank Elias for those kind words, and let me thank not only him but his entire family, the entire Hanna family, and everyone in the Assyrian community of Central Massachusetts for all you have done to enrich and support the Assyrian heritage of Massachusetts and the nation. And I think I speak for all of my colleagues in government who are here, you know, Senator Moore, Representative Moradian, members of your Board of Selectmen, Craig Dauphiné, and Jennifer Thomas. We are so grateful to all of you, and we feel so privileged to be here with all of you here today. I want to also thank Mr. Atman and Mr. Memagonian for your very moving words. I also want to recognize the Strassler Center for Holocaust and Genocide Studies at Clark University. It is such an important resource, and in these troubled times, whether we're looking at Sudan or Iraq and Syria, we depend on the center to remind us of the history and context of today's conflicts and persecution. So thank you, Mary Jane, for leading the center's work and for participating in this important commemoration today. So while sitting here this afternoon and listening to the speakers describe the history of the Assyrian genocide, reflecting on the prayers and music spoken and sung in a language very close to the words spoken by Jesus, I can't help but be moved by the power of memory and the power of community. It is humbling for me to be here as a speaker when I am really here as a student of history, a neighbor, a fellow Catholic, and a friend. I can't believe that anything I have to say can be more moving or more powerful than the heritage you share and the contributions your community has made to Massachusetts and the world for over 2 millennia. The genocide that we are commemorating today is a history of persecution and the systematic destruction of a people based on their religion and ethnicity. It is a history shared with Armenians or Greeks, perpetrated between 1914 and 1923, as has been described in detail by our speakers. This is the period that began to form the world's modern-day understanding of crimes against humanity and genocide. culminating 20 years later in the atrocities committed against the Jewish people of Europe. What is important about today and about the dedication of this monument is that the hundreds of thousands of Assyrians who perished during this horror were irreplaceable human beings. Each individual, man or woman, children or the elderly, were part of a family with dreams and hopes for the future. And all those hopes, all of those dreams, all of those possibilities were erased. And this was done deliberately. This was a choice made by leaders at all levels of the Ottoman Empire and those who took charge immediately after the empire's demise. The Assyrian people and the Assyrian Catholic Church have existed for over 2,000 years. In their ancestral homes of the Middle East, in Iraq, Syria, and Turkey, they lived and worshipped, established communities, and broke bread together long before Islam came into being. Sadly, the minority religions and peoples of the Middle East are facing yet another test as they are again being persecuted and targeted for extinction. Most of the world's 2 to 4 million Assyrians still live around their traditional homelands, although they are frequently displaced and fleeing violence and war like so many others in the region. It is estimated that some 60% of Iraqi Assyrians have been forced to abandon their homes and leave the country since the U.S. invaded Iraq in 2003. And today, tens of thousands of Assyrians in northern Iraq have fled persecution at the hands of ISIS, which has attacked Assyrian villages, killing or imprisoning hundreds. And with ISIS has come another form of genocide, the war against the history of mankind, with the destruction of archaeological sites, ancient books, artifacts, works of art, houses of worship, museums, centuries-old Bibles and relics. Yet, we can take hope from the survival of towns like Al-Qush in northern Iraq and Nineveh plains. People survive, and the culture and memory survive. We cannot sit idly by and watch this destruction continue. We need to provide aid and protection to those communities, these villages and towns, certainly for the sake of the Assyrian and other Christian minorities defiantly surviving the bloodbath raging around them, but also for the sake of our shared humanity. And clearly, the Assyrian culture and religion survived within all of those who, over the centuries, fled the region and made new lives in strange lands, including right here in the United States and right here in Grafton. And what a wealth of history, culture, and religion you have brought to us. How you have enriched our communities and our public life. You know, part of that history is St. Mary's Assyrian Apostolic Church, which was built on Holly Street in Worcester in 1924. I've read that it was built by about 30 Assyrian families who came to Massachusetts from southern Turkey. They were probably members of many of your families. They were joined in later decades by Assyrians from Turkey, Lebanon, and Syria, and more recently from Iraq. I knew that church, and it was a wonderful place. But a couple of years ago, it moved to a new home in Shrewsbury, which luckily is also part of my congressional district. And like this cultural center, it is a place of community and a place of defiance, of resistance, in the best meaning of those words. A place where culture and religion and human potential are valued, remembered, renewed, and strengthened. So while we come together today to commemorate the tragedy of the past and to dedicate a monument to its enduring memory, we also are here to celebrate the strength of community and the hopes of the future and our children's future. You know, the monument being dedicated today is called Hope. Hope gives us life. Hope gives us purpose. And hope gives us a reason to look forward to tomorrow. For centuries, Assyrians have survived persecution and some of the greatest evils known to humankind. But far from being exterminated, the Assyrian people, their religion and their culture continue to survive and thrive. And here you are, alive with hope in the promise of today and tomorrow, and in all the days to come. I am honored to share this moment in history with you. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Congressman,
This is a gift from our community, as it says, in commemoration of the 100-year Assyrian Genocide from the Assyrian American Association of Massachusetts.
I will proudly display this in my Washington, D.C. office.
I would like to present to Mary Jane Wren a commemorative pin which is dedicated to the genocide of Armenians, Assyrians, and Greeks. This pin was created by Thea Halo, the author of a very important book on genocide. She is half Greek and half Assyrian from Mardin.
I'm really deeply touched and so grateful to be a part of this special occasion. Thank you so much.
At this time, I'd like to acknowledge the artist, the very talented Nino Shamo. He was a sculptor and painter and designer of the monument.
We honor the lives that were lost and the memories of horror that haunt Assyrians who witnessed their families tortured, their children sold as slaves, their women raped, and their men murdered for 100 years.
Fair